Today I'm joined by Sarah T and her husband Dr. Mike T, and we're going to be talking about Sarah's experience of having a full hysterectomy and the fallout that happened afterwards. One of the reasons that you wanted to talk to us today was to give women the courage, if they're ever in a situation where they find themselves sitting in front of a medical professional and you're given very, very scary news. If anyone hears the word cancer, your mind goes into a blur. You can't hear anything else. If someone is sitting in front of a professional and they're given news like that, what advice would you give to them?
I would say to never listen to the first. If something is as bad as that, if anybody wants to operate on you, always get a second opinion. Had I had a second opinion, which I've had since, I would have actually opted for the non-surgical options first and then gone down the surgical route only if I had to. But I would have also found out what my ovaries, the loss of my ovaries would do to me if I couldn't take HRT, which I can't.
Because of your family history, you had a history of thrombosis, and was it?
My mother had breast cancer.
You wouldn't have been able to take HRT?
I was advised post-operatively, not pre-operatively, that I should take the lowest dose for as short as possible because of my family history. So had I been told that I would be going from 100% to 0, which is what you do when you lose your ovaries, if you're premenopausal, it's because I went from 100% to 0. Putting back a little bit of HRT is not going to be enough. But I only found that out afterwards, which I think is absolutely terrible, because I think a woman or any person who's going to have an operation should be told what that operation is going to do to her body and what the consequences are. The consequences for me were catastrophic, absolutely catastrophic.
What does the word catastrophic mean to you? Because they'll mean different things to different people.
Okay, it was immediate. I had complete sudden exhaustion. Bearing in mind I was a very fit, energetic person, I suddenly felt I couldn't even walk out to the washing line and hang the washing out. I was so tired. It was an exhaustion I'd never felt before. I was cold and shivery. And then the crash really came, where it affected every organ in my body. It affected my bladder, my bowels. It affected my mental state. I had no idea what was going on, which was frightening, because I was cowering in a corner, and I said to my husband, I feel as if I'm pumping out masses of adrenaline. And then we've learnt since that the adrenal glands are actually linked, not physically, but there's a word you've used, functionally, to the ovaries, and that when the ovaries suddenly are non-existent, the adrenals have to go into overdrive and produce more of what they're producing a small amount of. So they were pumping out all this adrenaline, trying to compensate for the ovary loss. And the effect it had on me was terrible panic attacks, and I had a fear of going out. This just wasn't me. My personality just changed. I was just not the person I was.
Now it's interesting. Obviously, Mike, you knew the word for that, and there's a reason. You're a doctor yourself. You're a GP. How, if I can ask you sort of a twofold question, how did it feel as a husband watching your wife go through something like this? And then how did it feel as a GP watching your wife go through something like this? You must have felt powerless on two different levels.
I did. As a husband, I was absolutely shocked to see how devastating the effects were. As a doctor, I had learned something of a surgical menopause, but in practice, I'd never seen it firsthand until Sarah went through it. And the experience was absolutely catastrophic, and it was barbaric to see what Sarah went through. And I had no idea, as a doctor, it would be like that. And I do feel that many GPs, unless they've had personal experience of it, just don't realise how severe it can be.
Do you think that your experience then as a husband has influenced how you are as a GP? If a woman comes into your surgery now talking about perhaps some of the symptoms that Sarah has had before or after, obviously you're going to be an awful lot more understanding than you were beforehand.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it starts all the way back. If I see a patient who comes in and said, I've been advised to have a hysterectomy, the first thing I now say is, have they suggested they're going to take your ovaries? And what have they told you if they have?
Mm-hmm.
And I then say, you need to find out from your specialist what effects this can have, because you need to be informed. I realised we weren't told the effects, and even as a doctor, I didn't know the effects. And I didn't know that what was going to happen if Sarah couldn't take HRT. And all the specialists and doctors that I've come across think all women can take HRT. They don't realise that there's a significant percentage of women who can't take HRT. And if they can't, it's catastrophic.
Well, they can't tolerate it.
They can't tolerate it.
Yeah.
We were told after the event by menopause experts, if you cannot take HRT, your quality of life will be extremely poor. And we should have been told that prior to the surgery, but we weren't.
This is one of the key reasons that you wanted to speak to us today, is it's all about making sure that anyone who is potentially going to their GP or potentially faced with what you were, is given all this information before, so you can make an informed decision.
Yeah, and I really truly am very upset and angry, and I want to try and put the message to other women that if you know, that there are your ovaries. I'm not saying don't have your ovaries removed. If there's a cancer reason, then for heaven's sake you need to have them removed. I'm not saying that at all. But in my case, they didn't need to come out. I think a lot of gynecologists don't understand the significance of what ovaries are doing for a woman. It's the same as taking a man's testicles away. You know, they are just not seen. You can't see them, so I think that's why they're given the insignificance they are. But I have now learned since that the ovaries carry on producing testosterone in a natural menopause for 12 years. Testosterone is vital, I've learned, for libido and energy. So I've had all my testosterone taken, and I can't put it back with HRT because I can't tolerate it.
A female loss of libido is something that is just accepted. That it's something that happens with age and what.
Women
what
do lose it gradually with
Yeah.
natural menopause, but it takes 12 years, and it's very, 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 very gentle, and then they plateau. With a surgical menopause, you literally hit rock bottom like that.
But I think also it's interesting that the connotations of the word libido. Now, the word libido to some people, it's almost Benny Hill type connotations. It's, you know, frisky ladies running around and frisky men running after them. Libido can mean joie de vivre. It can mean your energy levels. It can mean that your joyousness.
It's energy.
It's your energy.
It's energy. It's two things. Testosterone. I've learnt this. I know I'm talking like a doctor, but testosterone is your energy.
Yes.
And your libido. It's two things. So I don't have any. I do have energy, but it's nowhere near what it was.
On a day-to-day level, how do you feel?
Not as good as I was. I don't have the energy. Don't have the. I panic more about things. It affected my eyes. It affected every organ of my body, and I won't go into detail, but it did. They are better, thank God.
Yeah.
But I don't have. I've lost my mojo, and I feel as flat as a pancake. I can only describe it like that.
Do you feel helpless?
I do. I mean, obviously as a doctor, I know about a lot of HRT. I've found out a lot more about HRT since all this happened. I've found out about bioidentical hormones. I've looked into everything. I've seen Sarah try everything available and suffer horrible side effects for 5 months, 6 months. Really tried everything, and I've watched how distraught she was at not being able to take
Replace the natural hormones that were taken from you. That's the worst thing, is the panic. When you think, I need these hormones to get better to where I was, and I can't tolerate them. That is terribly, terribly distressing, actually.
I mean, certainly, coming back to your original question, as a doctor, I was not aware that ovaries continue to produce testosterone for 12 years, and I'm sure many of my peers and colleagues don't know that either. More importantly, there is no testosterone replacement that is licensed on the NHS
For women.
for women at all. There is testosterone replacement available in the form of gels or injections, but it is purely licensed for men. There was an implant many years ago, but it is now no longer produced in this country. It's only produced in America, and you can only get it privately, and it will cost several £100s every 6 months, which excludes most of the population. There is no substitute or replacement for it, and I think that's appalling.
We've spoken many times on This Girl Is on Fire about using HRT. What we haven't spoken about is people who can't
take
for whatever
HRT,
reason
yeah.
take HRT. What would you say to those women?
I would just say, for those women who cannot tolerate it, or can't take it for medical reasons, don't give up. There are other things, there are other ways. There are the bioidentical hormones, there are natural estrogens, which are plant estrogens derived from soya or yam. There are things like red clover that contain isoflavones that can help. And I would also come back to the bit that Sarah mentioned about adrenal fatigue. Adrenal glands, like ovaries, produce estrogen and testosterone, but not in such a great quantity. When the ovaries are removed, suddenly there is this huge and sudden demand for the ovaries to step up to try and produce what has been for the adrenal glands to step up and reproduce what has been lost by the removal of the ovaries. They can't do that, and so they go into overdrive. The body crashes. As Sarah said, you get all these symptoms such as anxiety, shakes, tremors, palpitations, panic attacks, and eventually the adrenals crash and you get adrenal fatigue. Now there are products that are available that can help rebuild the adrenal glands to come back to some form of normal function and produce DHEA, which is a precursor of estrogen and progesterone. That is possible.
And testosterone,
And
is it?
Estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone.
yeah.
And also, you can also take DHEA itself. But I think you need to think about things in a stepwise progress. Let's try and rebuild the things that need to be rebuilt first. When we've done that, what do we need then? Do we need DHEA? If all else fails, then yes, you can seek a menopause expert or a private consultant to try and get testosterone privately. See if that helps.
Is this all advice that you give to women who come to you?
It is now. It wasn't, because I didn't know. I was ignorant of the fact, I admit. You know,
and he's a very good doctor.
you know, I knew I knew something, but I didn't know enough.
Why do you think GPs don't know?
Because they're not told, they're not educated, because many specialists who do all the education don't feel it necessary. They have this blasé gung-ho attitude towards women and their ovaries. They think that taking them out is just a walk in the park. It's not going to have any bad effects. What's all the fuss about? They're very demeaning, and because of that, they not only don't tell their patients, they don't educate other doctors either.
We came across so much arrogance, and lack of respect for women, as if it was nothing. Oh, it's just menopause. It's just menopause. Well, no, actually, it's surgical menopause, because I've lost 100% and I'm now on 0, like that. And that, you don't take anybody off of drugs immediately. You wean them off. I had to go cold turkey. It is cold turkey, because you go for, it's just...
I mean, we now feel that women who go through a natural menopause
are
the
lucky.
lucky ones, because of how catastrophic a surgical menopause can be. It isn't in every case.
No.
But
I mean,
had
Angelina
we been
Jolie
informed?
takes HRT just naturally and normally, and she had her ovaries taken. She's a good example of it, but I'm an example of, if you can't take it for any reason, then you could be in trouble.
What medically do you think needs to be done? I mean, you've mentioned words like arrogance and ignorance. What really the first step has to be educating GPs, because they're normally a woman's first port of call.
they are the first port of call, but obviously we don't make the decision as to what treatment is necessary. So a woman will come to us with a set of symptoms that say it's heavy periods, pain, whatever. We might organise the basic test investigations, we might find fibroids, we might not be sure. We then refer to a gynaecologist. They then say, this is the diagnosis, we think this is the treatment you need. And I think most gynecologists need more
They're the ones,
education
yeah.
to tell patients what they could expect. As Sarah said, some gynecologists do it. They're out there, they're lovely, they tell people what should happen, what might happen, what the risks are. And I think that's really important. People need to be able to make an informed decision.
That's the message really, is to check that there aren't less drastic, and don't just think the only option is surgery.
No, don't accept what you're told. If you have any
Any
doubts, get a second opinion. Or go back to the GP and discuss it further. Because very few people come in to discuss with me their potential surgery. Very few. And I'm there, they can come and say, I've been advised this, what do you think? And then I'll tell them.
What now for you both?
Well,
I think
I'm trying to, because I have adrenal fatigue, because my adrenals went into this terrible overload. So I'm repairing my adrenals. But I really, more than anything, I'm still angry about having not been told all the things for me to make an informed, consented choice. And if I could just help that change, that would help me get better. Because I just think, why should, if you were going to take a man's testicles off, you would tell him what it was going to do to him. There's no way a man would go away not knowing how that was going to affect him. Why not tell a woman about her ovaries? If you're going to take a leg off, you say, well, you're not going to be able to walk properly. I just want information for women to get, and to be respected a bit more, actually, by not all gynecologists, but some.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I think there are a lot of gynecologists who are very dismissive towards women. They're very dismissive towards their quality of life, their libido, their ovaries. They would take them out without second thought and without thought of the consequences for that person, because they're not going to see that patient again. Once for follow-up maybe, they don't know the problems or difficulties they're going to have in their life. They really don't care about it, unfortunately, and I think they should. I think they should tell patients everything they might need to know. The consent process needs to change. The information process needs to change. What needs to happen is informed consent. Patients need to be told more so they're more knowledgeable. And if they have any doubts, they should always get a second opinion.